What are your thoughts about all of this as it's playing out now?
Well, this is simply a collapse of a sense of shame in the political class in Nigeria. I mean, any idiot can tell what game is being played. We know it's not about sensitivity to availability of network. If that were the case, as diligent legislators, they should have had laws that say that fintech cannot operate in Nigeria because it is possible that the network can fail and a decent, honest citizen will lose their money. But they didn't do that. So clearly there is a motive, and the motive is a motive of stealing, of cheating, of treason. Because to take what does not belong to you and usurp the governing of the country is treason. And so my personal recommendation is several. The Attorney General fails in his duty if he doesn't begin to prosecute those people in the Senate who are committing treason against the Nigerian people by refusing to do what is right. Two, the people are the ultimate authority. The people should begin to picket all members of the National Assembly who have not done the right thing in front of their homes, constituency offices, and begin a process of recalling all of them from National Assembly. And the people should be determined that nobody, I'm sorry there will be collateral damage of some good people who are there today, nobody in the current National Assembly should return to the next assembly because they have abused the fundamental reason for representation, which is the fact that it's an agency function. They don't act in their interest. They act in the interest of those who have sent them to represent them. And they have deliberately chosen not to represent those people's interests in order to advance a crooked intention to commit treason by preventing the will of the Nigerian people from being reflected in election outcomes. This is the simple truth of what is going on. And if they don't get tried in Nigerian courts, by golly, we will go to international courts and seek that they be tried. Look, I started this campaign even under military rule. When Abacha was in power and what was going on, I traveled around the world at my own expense, talking to leaders, talking to editorial boards, saying to them that countries with weak institutions are in such a position that we need supranational institutions to hold power accountable. An outcome of all of that was the International Criminal Court. When I was carrying out this campaign, of course, with others better healed, I wanted two courts. This current criminal court, which would deal with issues of genocide and co, and a second, an economic crimes court that would try leaders from countries with weak institutions that carry out economic crimes against their people. Most people told me that it would not happen, it will not work. Oh, people go back to the Peace of Westphalia, 1648, when these notions of sovereignty were established and you couldn't interfere in internal affairs of countries. But we know, after the 30 Years' War, following the defenestration of Prague in 1618, that new conditions have since prevailed upon the conscience of the international community, which led to United Nations looking at what happened to the Jews in Germany and the genocide at Armenia and such places, that a new world order needs to prevail. And we argue that an extension of that new world order is that politicians from poor countries like Nigeria, who are committing treason against the people, should be triable in international court. Even people in INEC, who have worked in INEC and have conspired to prevent the will of Nigerian people from holding, should be liable to trial in these international courts and should spend the rest of their lives in a place like Fiji, in a prison in Fiji. We, people, institute the people's revolution that will make these things happen. Otherwise, Nigeria will continue to be a sad laughing stock before the world.
So shall we give up now, or do you think that there is still a room for us to navigate? And yes, sir.
Yeah. We should not give up. We should fight harder to make sure that the will of people prevail. Look, you remember the Philippines. Ferdinand Marcos thought he had everything. He had all the powers. He could do what he wanted to do. And small women with their candles and their rosary beads came out and sat there. And Marcos ordered the tank on these women. And the general who led the tank out, Fidel Ramos, turned the tanks around on the presidential palace. And that was the end of Marcos. The police and the military are being put on notice that the class in Nigeria is trying to prevent the Nigerian people from being true sovereigns. And they too have an obligation, like Fidel Ramos had.
Well, Prof, in addition to some of what you recommended, part of the challenge that we have equally noticed is the death of certain credible persons, you know, like a huge number, just get into the political arena in that complex whole and seek to make that change. Most of the times, many will tell you, nah, I can't find myself getting in there. How do we get to the next level to ensure that we have at least a group, if not way much more than that, to get into the frame and let that change also happen from that angle?
Well, you've got to start from educating the people. A number of things have been weaponized by the political class in Nigeria. They weaponize poverty so that they pauperize people. Look, Tony's metaphor is of a class of people that they are so deep in water, literally, that a ripple can drown them. And when you are drowning, you hang on to any straw. You are powerless. This is why in some of the great democracies of the world, everybody could not vote the same day. In the United States, they use property to evaluate maturity before you could get the vote. Went on for hundreds of years, literally. But we live in an enlightened age where people who are illiterate can catch up more quickly. So we must embark on massive public enlightenment and tell people of their rights so that they can claim it. Look, we also need to educate fellows who are not so smart but think they have power. We let them look at Sudan and tell them what our friends said to those who led Sudan, who thought they were infallible, until the revenge of the poor began. They have reduced their country to a rubble. We look at Somalia, we look at Liberia, and let us say to these people who are putting themselves ahead of the Nigerian people that the hour is near and they will pay a very dear price for what they are doing.
Well, part of what we also saw the last elections, it's a huge statement, is that there are actually a lot of people who really want this change to happen. And it also does appear as though there are perhaps a lot more people who equally want that change to happen, who perhaps didn't see the need to take that step, because how could we explain Labour Party in less than 6 months garnered that amount of votes, 6 million odd votes, almost the same with a candidate who's been contesting since 1992.
When you remove all the cheating, you will find that it was several times. But anyway, let's go with that.
But what principle do we apply now? Because you imagine that if some of those other people who thought, man, nothing will happen, if they had also come out there and done something, who knows? The result might have been different. How do we get them also to see reason why do something? Don't just sit on your hands or something.
by having the kind of conversation you and I are having right now, they may be motivated to see that the possibilities are there. So this movement that led to 2023 was natural. Anybody can tell you what they did or did not do. Even those of us in the so-called forefront, I have no clue what we did. We just essentially ran into a desire by the Nigerian people to get rid of this mess. And that was aborted. A company, let me go back to my business as a teacher of business. A company that does not seek to get a return on experience, that does not seek to be a learning organization, does not stay around for a long time. And so to get a return on experience, what you do is whenever you have a misstep, you evaluate the mistake. How come we had the elections of 2023 and there has been no evaluation of what happened? Foreign broadcast organizations did clear analysis and proved that the result in River State were a complete pass, as it was not the vote of the people, was more than a reversal of just the vote of the people. Nobody has bothered to prove that. We must begin now. We must ask what happened in 2023. There must be consequences. If there is no consequence, then the mess will continue. It is a time for consequence management, which is the basis from which companies ensure that they remain effective. Countries should be in the same position. Lawyers, I believe, have a great part of the blame in this country. Lawyers, by their profession, should be responsible for doing everything to ensure that the rule of law prevails. But the judiciary has been sadly delegitimized in Nigeria. And everybody talks about it, including lawyers. And lawyers haven't done enough. I believe lawyers should begin a process of delisting judges and lawyers who have participated in this demolition of the foundations of Nigeria's democracy.
Prof, when I asked you about hope, I don't think I was speaking about Nigeria in general. I was speaking in relation to the process that has now happened and produced this new electoral amendment. It's still a bill. It hasn't been signed by the president. There are those who think that the president shouldn't sign it and should discard it, even though some people will say maybe that is us throwing the baby out to the bathwater. That is if you believe that there is any baby here. But I want to ask you, because it does appear that a lot of people are disappointed. They are totally unhappy, and they think that we have already made room for us to not have very good elections come 2027. Do you share that belief, and do you think that there is still something that can be done to remedy it?
I will go as far as to say cancel the whole elections if we don't get the proper thing done now. It is pointless because people will have no faith in the election. They will not come out to vote. And I believe that's what some of those people in the Senate want, for Nigerians not to come out to vote. But let them go and look at what happened to Samuel Doe. Things happen to people who think they can run roughshod over the will of the people. Things happen to them.
So what would you say to, you would say to Nigerian people to come out to vote in spite of the imperfections in the Electoral Act?
No. I'll say to Nigerian people to boycott the elections completely.
Is that wise? Because we saw what happened on the floor of the House yesterday.
Let them know that they've carried out a coup. And let them go to the international community and talk about their legitimacy.
As I said, I was asking if that was wise, because we saw what happened on the floor of the House yesterday. Opposition lawmakers were unhappy with what had transpired on the floor of the House and staged a walkout, and they just paved way for that amendment to pass, smoothly.
It's a cause. The APC people in the House who knew the truth, knew what to do, were ashamed, were afraid to be seen. Let the cause, the APC, prevent them from getting nominated. Why does everybody want to be in public office so badly? Why do they all want? Why is the dignity of standing for truth not enough to say, even if they get me, let them get me? I don't mind not coming back to this house. For that, they bear a burden for which they will pay a price, I assure you. Big price.
In fact, Prof, INEC is proposing 873.78 billion naira for this election we're even talking about that is going to happen. And the budget keeps increasing every now and then. So it appears we keep spending huge amounts of money and not getting the kind of result that people want.
For nothing. Yeah. You see, this is what one of the reasons I insist that this thing is internationalized. All of the INEC money donated by foreign donors, who should account to their own taxpayer. And what they do when people abuse taxpayers' money is that they try them in their countries. They should not, because they are in other countries, throw the money away. So the international community should demand an accounting from INEC. I am very particular about INEC. I would like to see anybody who has worked in INEC subjected to a review of their account, assets. And if they indicate that their assets bear no resemblance to their income, it should be put on trial. Because INEC is part of making this mess. You see, the consequence is so much more than even the so-called election outcome. Because they've ravaged our institutions. Central to human progress are a number of things. Most historians, economists, political scientists are now agreed that institutions are premium. I like to add culture. Values and institutions are central to how human progress takes place. In doing what these fellows are doing without thinking, they are fracturing the value system of Nigeria. They are destroying institutions like Nigeria, like INEC, Nigerian police, the military, and all of that. What it is that they're sentencing Nigeria, lack of progress, in perpetuity. If that can go through their heads and they come out with the swag they come out with, they need to be in an asylum.